Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 24 of Chess Basics, things every chess player ought to know. Today we're going to look at the how to win when you have a rook pawn. If you remember when I talked in episode 20 about the Lucena position, I mentioned that that works for every kind of pawn except for the rook pawn, and in that case the king was just too close. And this diagram here shows how far away the king has to be in order to win. And this position is a win for white. And the key thing to notice is that the rook is cutting the black king off on the third file. If we count the files from the left in this position, 1, 2, 3, he's on the third file, and he has to get all the way over to the 8th file to stop that pawn. And the rook is preventing him from moving in that direction. Let's see, white's king is in a good position by the pawn here. It's white's turn to move, so he needs to get out of the way and let the pawn advance. And black, to stop it, will check the king, and then you can go forward diagonally in that same sort of inchworm technique to move the pawn forward. Now if the rook ever comes over here to prevent the king from going to the side, you can just drop straight back and then move the pawn forward. And then here, now at this point, your king is completely cut off. It has no moves. The white king is cut off, and the king is in front of the pawn, so the pawn has no moves. The only thing you can move here is the rook. And at this point, you'll see why having the king far enough away is important. What you need to do is you need to get your rook to this square where it's supported by the pawn and where it chases the black rook off of this file so that the king can come out and then let the pawn queen. So how do you get to that square? Well, just take the simplest route. You would like to go here and here, but of course you'll get taken, so you go as far as you can. And now the king is going to race to stop you. But you get there just in time. And from here, it's an easy win, actually. So what should black do? First of all, let's see what happens if he moves his king. Oh, we can't move his king because his rook, I'm sorry, his rook is hanging. He's got to move the rook. And so the rook can go right or left. Let's say he stays over here. It doesn't really matter. What happens now is your king can come out. That's the whole point of putting that rook there. And now he can check your king, and you can just walk towards the rook. So he keeps checking you. And you have to be careful not to leave that pawn behind so that the rook can take it. So you have to stay in touch with the pawn. But now when he checks you here, you can come to this square. And now as he checks, you just stay on these two squares. And eventually the checks run out. And you get a queen. So that's just winning. And if that was all there was to it, this would always be an easy win. But sometimes your opponent is a little bit more clever, and he knows this much. And he knows that in this position, instead of playing king d7, he can make your life much more difficult by playing king to d6. And so this is really the main line. That other is a variation showing the idea of how you win if he doesn't play the most precise move. But this is the most precise move, going king to d6. You do the same thing, and it doesn't matter where the rook goes. You go here, he checks you. And now the problem is, if you can see it, your king can go to here and to here, but he can't go to there because the king is guarding all three of these squares, which means, let's go ahead and play through it. Check, check, check. This is as far forward as you can go. Check again. And now you can't go to the side because you would hang the pawn. You have to go back here. And so you can never make any more progress. You can't go out to this side, which is the way you win in the other line. So let's back up. That doesn't work. That ends up in a draw. So what else can you do here? Okay, so he just played rook a1. You go king b7. He goes rook b1 check. Your only other move, and the one that wins, is going this way. So this is the main line. And he checks you here, and now you hide underneath this king. So this is something you couldn't do in the other line because his king was on d7, but when his king went to d6 to stop you from coming out on this side, then you go out on the other side. Now, this position is not so simple But I'll show you how it goes. He comes over here, and he's going to threaten checkmate. And you need to do something about that right away. And the thing to do is to play your rook here to check that king. Now you notice your king is blocking these squares, and the rook is blocking all of these squares. So his king can only go to one of these three squares here. Now if he goes to the square on the diagonal, you check. You queen with check and win. And if he goes far away like this, then you have a simple win just by putting your rook behind the pawn. And then the checks don't matter here. The checks run out, basically. You have to remember to stay in touch with your rook. You can't get too far away from the rook. But basically you're going to queen. And you end up with a rook. So that's winning. So let's back up to this critical point here. So that wins for white. This wins for white because the simple queen and check. So he has to go to this square. Again, to make your life as miserable as possible. And then you have this really cute move, which is the one one hard move to remember, but once you've seen it, it's a hard move to find, but once you've seen it, it's kind of memorable. You play rook c6 check. You just sacrifice the rook, and if he takes it, you queen. And then when the king moves out of the way, you grab the rook. And so you're winning. And he can try not taking the rook. He can go to the side, for example. But in that case, it's pretty simple for you to, you just come back this way. And his king can't come forward. If he takes the rook again, then you can, if he takes the rook again, then you queen with check. So his only try is to start checking you again. And this time you use your rook to block the checks. And he has no more checks, and his king can't get any closer. So the next move, you're going to queen. And that's the way you do it. Now the only thing that can make this more difficult is if his rook, at this point, his rook didn't have to go all the way to the corner. Right here. You see, there's a problem with his rook in the corner. And so again, to make your life difficult, he could have placed his rook over here, say. And now it's tricky. But basically you do the same thing. Check. And for the same reason, he has to go to this square. And check. He takes. And then you queen with check. And then the king moves away. And now you have a situation where you've got a queen against a rook. And this is a win for white, but it's very difficult in general to win. If you were to play this against the computer would hold it. But if you look at this position, you see I made a mistake right away. When the king went to here, king to c5, well, obviously the queen has this skewer here and picking up the rook. And that's how you win these endgames. So it just turns out that in this position, if you stay alert, you know, he's going to move his king to some square, and you just have to figure out where the checks are that are going to give you that fork or that skewer that wins the rook, and just play it from that way. It's a good position for white because the king and the rook are widely separated, so they're subject to lots of tactics. But there's no formula that I can give you at this point. You're going to have to discover the tactics over the board to win this one. So it is a bit tricky, but this is the best you can do if black plays the most accurate line. So that's it. Let's go back all the way to the beginning. And remember the plan. You inch forward with the king, and then you get your rook to this square here. So let's fast forward to that position, and his king has to be cut off. His king has to be cut off on the third file so that you have time for the rook maneuver to get over and get to this square. And then if you get to this position, you can win from here by chasing his rook away and inching your king out. And the simplest win, if you can go out towards the rook, is the fastest. But if he's clever and plays this king to this square here, then you have to go out underneath the king, and then remember to check and sack the rook here so you can queen with check. So that's the whole plan for rook and pawn versus king when he's cut off on the side. I wanted to give you one more example of a different kind of way the king can be cut off. And this is taken from a real game. And this was played recently. It was played at the Tal Memorial in 2013. And let's fast forward to move 49. This is Magnus Carlsen is white and Fabiano Caruana is black. And Fabiano has the extra pawn. So he's winning. Let's see, move 49 here. White could have gone back and attacked the G pawn, but he chose instead to attack the, this is the B pawn rather. He chose instead to attack the F pawn here. And this gave Fabiano an opportunity to simplify into a rook and pawn rook and pawn endgame with the rook pawn. So black takes a pawn, white takes a pawn with check, king goes forward to attack the other white pawn, and white checks again and grabs the last but the rook pawn. So he's got all the pawns except for the rook pawn, and his king is close, but his king is cut off in a different way. His king is cut off, if you count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, his king is cut off on the 4th rank, and it really needs to get in front of the pawn down here on the 8th rank. And it turns out, again, this is just far enough away that black can win this. So let's see how black plays this. He moves his rook to the side to get out of the way of the pawn, and white puts his rook behind to check from behind, and the king goes forward, and he starts checking. And I don't know the details of this particular endgame. It's very interesting to me that the king goes towards the white king and away from the black pawn. But the black pawn can come forward, so I assume the idea is for the black king to keep the white king out of these key squares as long as possible. So the check there, and he keeps inching forward with his king. So he got all the way up to the 7th rank, and now he starts moving the pawn forward. And at this point, he brings his rook over to protect himself from checks on the side. And he grabs the 2nd rank here. And then he plays this rook f2 check. And at this point, Magnus resigns, but I think he realizes it's losing. The point is that if the king comes this way, then black's king can come here, and he's sheltered from checks by white's king. So if the rook comes over to attack the pawn, then you can just march it forward. And if the king gets out of the way, then you can march the pawn forward, and on the check, the king can hide over this way from further checks. So this is just winning at this point. And so that's another way you can win it, is if you have the king cut off on the 4th rank. So this is a game that's worth study. So let's just play through it one more time, the way he handled this. So rook out of the way, king forward, and king to the side. Well, he was checked, so he couldn't stay. He couldn't stay on this file, and he didn't want to go directly in front of the pawn. He wants to go forward and get as far forward as he can. So he steps to the side. Another check. He goes back. Another check, and now he goes to the 2nd rank. And the pawn comes forward to the 7th rank. And then he brings the rook in and grabs this 2nd file, similar to what we saw in the other endgame. And white's king is just too far away at this point. Okay, and that wins it. So hope you guys enjoyed that. And the game, if you want to look at that for reference, was Carlsen Caruana in 2013 from the Tal Memorial. And so I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to switch topics again after these 4 videos on the endgame. I think I will go back and look at some tactics next. So hope you guys are looking forward to that, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.